first, second, and fourth quarters, but lost by double digits. Miami opened the third quarter on a 22-2 run, finishing with a 25-point advantage. Jimmy Butler outscored the Celtics by himself. Celtics would bounce back on the road in Game 2, jumping out to a 25-point lead in the first half that they would hold on to for the rest of the game, draining 23s on 50% shooting in the process. Bam Adebayo did everything for the Heat in Game 3. Adebayo led Miami in points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. And the Heat led by as many as 26 in the first half to retake the lead in the series. Back we go. Game 4, Boston stormed out of the gate. Miami did not make a shot until 3:22 in the first quarter, longest drought to start any playoff game in the last 25 years. And after a sluggish first half in Game 5, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown combined for 37 points on 14 of 23 shooting in the second, just one shy of the Heat's total as a team to capture the series lead and a chance to close out the Heat. New on SportsCenter, Victor Oladipo, what's the mindset tonight?
We all been through it.
We're going to go to Game 1 in what has been a series of runs. After trailing at halftime by 8 points, the Heat went on a 39-14 run in the third quarter to take control of the game, powered by Jimmy Butler's 41 points, including his steals on back-to-back possessions. The Heat would win Game 1 118-107. We're going to move on to Game 2. Marcus Smart, who missed Game 1, marked his return to the series in spectacular fashion, making highlight after highlight after highlight. It just went on and on and on. Smart totaled 24 points, 12 assists on the night, and Celtics win Game 2, 127-102. Game 3, Jimmy Butler would leave the game at half, and the Celtics roared back. Late fourth quarter, Jaylen Brown hits a three to make it a one-point game, 40 points for Brown. Following Heat possession, Max Strus answers right back with a three of his own. Shot clock winding down. Bam Adebayo puts up a prayer, gets it a go. Heat hang on to win 109-103. Game 4, Celtics defense dominated in this one as they held the entire Heat starting unit to a total of 18 points. Jason Tatum, meanwhile, had 31 in the game. Boston led from start to finish, including leading by 32 at one point. Celtics win Game 4, 102-82. All right, we got Game 5. Celtics took control of the series by taking Game 5 in Miami. Tatum and Brown took over in the second half of the game, sparking a 24-2 run, capping the game off with a thunderous dunk by Brown. Celtics win Game 5 and head to Game 6 with a chance to close out the series. But not so fast. Game 6, Jimmy Butler pulled out a performance for the ages with 47 points. Miami needed every point with Boston coming back. Late in the game, Butler hit a fadeaway jumper in the corner to beat the shot clock. Kyle Lowry had words on the Butler performance.
How would you describe Jimmy's game?
Incredible. My bad. Listen, don't find me NBA. That was by mistake. That was really by mistake.
Heat win Game 6 to avoid elimination. And for more, we are going to be joined now by NBA analyst Corey Alexander. Corey, we know Jimmy Butler and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are going to be huge factors, but starting with Boston, who else needs to have an impact performance in Game 7?
Victoria, it has to be Marcus Smart. And you go back and you look at his Game 2 numbers after missing Game 1, 24 points, 12 assists, 9 rebounds. Marcus Smart was all over the place. He was a menace defensively. He did everything the Celtics needed him to do in a big win on the road in Miami. And Marcus Smart has to be more of a facilitator. He's got to be more of a guy who gets everything going for the Celtics on both ends of the floor. I think he does that in Game 7. On the other side, it's got to be Bam Adebayo for the Heat. In Game 3, 31 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists for Bam. He was spectacular in Boston. He's got to bring that same energy, that same aggressiveness onto his home court in a Game 7 to give his team an opportunity to move on to the NBA Finals.
Now, Corey, who do you have advancing to take on the Warriors in the NBA Finals?
Well, when you think about this, of course, you get the Warriors as a reward for winning the Eastern Conference Finals, but also there's a Larry Bird Eastern Conference Finals MVP trophy at stake. And of course, you would want that to go to a Celtic, right? Well, Larry Bird averaged 27 points per game, 9 rebounds per game, 7 assists per game in his Game 7s. And you're going to need to see that type of effort from Jason Tatum tonight in a big-time Game 7. I believe Jason Tatum gets it done, and the Celtics move on to face the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Finals this year. And Jason Tatum takes home the inaugural Larry Bird Eastern Conference Most Valuable
You heard
Player.
it. You heard it from Corey Alexander, the Celtics. Okay. Well, yeah, this is going to be the second Eastern Conference Final Game 7 between these two. A decade ago, the Heat won Game 7 in Miami. Thank you.
In front of the Celtics tonight.
Well, it's a golden opportunity, Malika, right? And Perk knows about this. 10 years ago, the Oklahoma City Thunder were in the NBA Finals. They had KD, Russ, and Harden. There's that famous picture of the three of them on the sidelines at Game 5. And Perk. I was letting you throw that in. And there was that famous picture of the three of them on the sidelines at the end of Game 5. The clock's ticking down. Everybody's thinking this is the beginning of a dynasty. These guys are going to make the finals a bunch of times. They're going to win multiple championships. That team, for a bunch of reasons, a lot of them out of their control, never made it back to the finals again, let alone won championships, right? And in today's NBA, where things are changing all the time, the Celtics have 7 guys between 23 and 27. Yeah, they've got Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who are young guys who are ascending in their careers, but nothing is guaranteed. And so with this game on the line here tonight against a beat-up Heat team where they're clear favorites at home, and then in an NBA Finals where I think they have a real chance to beat the Warriors, this is an opportunity that might not come again. And to me, they really need to take advantage of it.
Perk, I'm curious. When you were on that OKC team that lost to the Heat, I know it was 10 years ago, but were you thinking in that moment, oh, we're going to be back for years to come?
No, I never took it for granted. I mean, like making it to the finals, people don't realize that's a big accomplishment in itself, right? And I just didn't know, right? When you're dealing with a lot of young players on the team, a lot of young players that want to achieve individual things, individual goals, a lot of young players that want to get a big bag, a big bankroll. See, that's what separated the Oklahoma City Thunder team, was that James Harden wanted to be a franchise guy. James Harden wanted his own team. James Harden wanted all his lettuce. And so when you have a team like that, it's hard to build a dynasty because you can't knock a person for wanting to go get $200+ million here instead of selling for $80 million over here to sacrifice. When you're older, it's a lot easier. Like when I was on the Celtic team, you look at Ray Allen, KG, and Paul Pierce, it was easier for those guys to sacrifice because they had already accomplished everything individually that they needed to, and the only thing that they needed to do was actually win a championship.
And let's look at the reality of it. A small market team in Oklahoma City, it was going to be very difficult for them to pay, essentially 3 max contracts to their stars and have any kind of an infrastructure around them. A team like Boston, they can go into the luxury tax. And the disparity in this league right now between big market and small market, that's going to be the story of these collective bargaining talks. Small market teams want to see and have a better ability to be able to compete in this league. They are using so much of their revenue to just pay operating costs. So a team like Boston, financially, they can keep this together. But in this league, it is hard to sustain the relationships, injuries, as Perk said, players wanting a bigger role. That's what breaks teams up. Financially, that's not at risk for Boston. But a team like Oklahoma City, there's a smaller window there. There's a smaller margin for error just because of the disparity in market sizes and revenue.
Well, just look at the luck, too, right? You need so much luck to win. Look at the Milwaukee Bucks, right? Chris Middleton's hurt. You go back last year, the Phoenix Suns make the NBA Finals first time in Chris Paul's career. They had a bunch of injuries to help them get there, right? Every year you see teams benefit from luck at different stages. And it's just like you said, Perk, it's so hard to just get to the finals, let alone to win. And so with this opportunity in front of these guys, they just really need to take advantage of it because who knows if it'll happen again.
It certainly seems that if they can keep their health, they have a very good chance against the Golden State Warriors, even though the Warriors are an experienced, talented team. But first, they need to get through this Game 6 tonight against Miami. Woj and Bontemps, thank you so much. Still ahead.
All right, so the Celtics are 2.5-point favorites to win on Sunday night in Miami, according to the Caesars Sportsbook. But ESPN's BPI makes the Heat slight favorites. Celtics 25-9 all time in Game 7s, the most wins and best winning percentage of any franchise. Miami 6-4 in Game 7. So, question is, what do Jalen Rose and Stephen A expect to see Sunday? They're with our Malika Andrews.
Gentlemen, the Miami Heat, they forced a Game 7 back in their house. Stephen A., I want to start with you on the Celtics side of things. What do they need to do to close this series out?
How about not replicating your effort in Game 6? How about Jaylen Brown scoring more than 2 points in an entire second half? How about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown not combining for a grand total of 1 shot in the first 11 minutes of a fourth quarter? That would help. That would help immensely. Though these are the 2 stars of the Boston Celtics. Now that Jimmy Butler has reminded you there is a star on the Miami Heat coming for you, it's incumbent upon the stars to step up and answer the call. We know about everything else they got to do defensively and what have you, and do your job as supplementary parts. But Game 7s come down to the stars, and the stars for the Boston Celtics have got to show up. Otherwise, we're going to remember them not so fondly for years to come from this one.
And if you're the Miami Heat, the best player on either team is going to drive the narrative in Game 7. Stephen A. just mentioned it, and that was Jimmy Butler in Game 6. Can it also be him in Game 7? But here's the difference. At home, your role players perform better. So we saw Kyle Lowry play well today and knock down shots, 18 points, 10 assists. Strus started to make shots. If they can find Bam Adebayo's offense on their home floor, the Miami Heat got a terrific chance to close out this series.
Well, and Jimmy Butler, he took a load on in this Game 6. I asked Eric Spoelstra whether or not he was concerned at all about his minutes, what he needs to do, and he said, you know what, Jimmy's going to do whatever it takes to be ready for that Game 7, not replicate what happened in the bubble when he laid it all out there. He said this is a different point in the season, and he believes they can do it, Stephen A.
That means he believes in Jimmy Butler, as everyone does. Medical staff, MVPs of this game, one could argue. But I'll tell you this, we didn't bring this up in the last several months, Jalen. All that conversation about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown coexisting with one another, obviously that's been thrown out of the window based on how Boston looked since the new year arrived. If they lose this series, who's to say that subject's not going to be broached again?
So we were talking about Jason Tatum as a top 10 player for sure.
Absolutely.
And people were elevating him on paper ahead of a guy like Jimmy Butler, who's already led the Miami Heat to the NBA Finals. In today's game, Jason Tatum in the fourth quarter, 1 shot attempt, as he said, and 4 turnovers. It's going to be imperative for him to show up, in particular for a team that's been to the conference finals 4 times.
I think it's safe to say the days of underestimating Jimmy Butler have come to an end.
It's over. The days of underestimating Jimmy Butler are over. We get to see it all play out in Game 7. The 2 best words in sports other than weekend off is Game 7, and we...
Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat facing elimination here tonight in Game 6 on the road. Jimmy Butler continues his remarkable bounce-back game. Butler turns, fires, it's good! We have a Game 7.
Game 7, we got to come out and find a way to win.
We get to take it back to the crib and win Game 7.
Well, from the hoops aficionados to the folks in the desert, it was really hard to find anyone who expected the Miami Heat to win Game 6 in Boston last night. Too banged up, coming off an historically awful offensive performance in Game 5, it seemed a foregone conclusion that the Celtics would wrap it up on their home floor and go on to meet the Warriors in the finals. But not so fast, my friends. Did we all forget about the Heat culture, about the fierceness of one Jimmy Butler, about the fact that this team played in the finals 2 years ago? Here's Coley Harvey with more on a Miami team that defied the odds and brought the series back home for Game 7.
Greatness typically appears in moments of peril and doubt. Friday night, against all odds, the greatness of Jimmy Butler appeared.
Turns, fires, got it! Butler with a miraculous shot.
On the heels of back-to-back lopsided losses that put the Miami Heat on the brink of elimination, Butler dug down deep in Game 6 and kicked into a gear that only the best in Heat history have experienced.
And it's Jimmy Buckets time again, early roll call.
Kyle Lowry, how would you describe Butler's 47-point effort?
Incredible. My bad.
Lowry's quip aside, the Heat and Celtics had less colorful but similarly poignant ways to discuss the franchise's best individual scoring performance in a playoff elimination game. Butler's 47 points were 2 more than LeBron James had in Game 6 of the 2012 Eastern Conference Finals.
It's funny because before the game, me and Markeith were joking with Jimmy. We're like, yo, we need 50. And he looked at us and didn't say a word and just nodded his head, kept going. I was like, oh yeah, he's about to play. He's locked in.
That's poetry in motion.
He just had it rolling. Made a lot of shots that, film will live with, and we just had no answers for him tonight.
Before the game, Butler heard from Dwayne Wade, who told him to keep building on Miami's postseason legacy. Wade doesn't check in with Butler very often, but typically does when his voice is needed the most, Butler said. Even if he doesn't hear from Wade again Sunday, the Heat hope that Butler has another impressive showing in this win-or-go-home Game 7 in Miami. In Boston, I'm Coley Harvey, ESPN.
Stephen A. Smith joins us once again from Boston. And Stephen A., if we were right all the time in our business, you and I'd go to Vegas and we get the penthouse and we just bet on games and win them all, right? But if you're going to be wrong, at least you got to see a performance like we saw from Butler tonight, and this series goes back to Miami Game 7. I just wonder, you've seen a lot of great performances. Frame for me how you feel Butler performed on this stage.
Well, I'm sitting here shell-shocked. I was absolutely stunned at the spectacular performance that Jimmy Butler had, not because I thought he wasn't capable of it if healthy. Like I told you, last game, watching these guys over the last 2 games, it felt like an infirmary. Kyle Lowry was hurt. Jimmy Butler was hurt. Strus was hurt. Everywhere you look, Oladipo was the only one that looked relatively healthy. He only had 3 points last game. You watch these guys get off the team bus. You watch these guys walk into the locker room following their Game 5 loss. They look like they could barely walk. That's why I thought it was all but a guarantee that Boston would close them out. But somehow, some way, the medical staff of the Miami Heat looked like they deserved the MVP outside of Jimmy Butler because he was absolutely spectacular and unstoppable. He was a man amongst boys. There's no doubt about that. But let's be honest. Yep. On our worst day, we cannot assume that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum would spend the first 11 minutes of a fourth quarter taking one shot.
Yep.
One. Jaylen Brown scored 2 points in the entire second half. On his worst day, nobody would have ever predicted that. And so when you look at it from that perspective, the level of inefficiency, the lack of aggression, the inability to get off in any way, shape, form, or fashion is not something you anticipated would happen. Jimmy Butler dropping 47, that is the story, and it deserves to be the story. But if there's a second-tier story, it's the fact that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum were no-shows in the fourth quarter. In terms of attempts, not even makes, attempts, that's what we're talking about here. That's why we're going to have a Game 7 back in South Beach.
Yeah, Stephen A., old guys like you and me remember, the Fred Sanford walk, right? Like, literally, they got off the bus. I saw Kyle Lowry, and he's walking like Fred G. Sanford, and then they found something. And it was remarkable because we had P.J. Tucker on earlier, and no one doubts the greatness of this team if they're right, but they didn't look right in Games 4 and 5. So right. That's what made this so shocking. Boston's shown quite a capacity to go on the road and win, both against Milwaukee and against Miami, and they have superstar players. Predicting anything in this series is a fool's errand, but I just wonder, based on that fourth quarter in particular, what's your sense of what you think you'll see from the road team Sunday night in Miami out of Boston?
Well, listen, Game 7 is for all the marbles. We understand that. The reality of the situation is that all the pressure is on the shoulders of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They've been in Eastern Conference Finals before. How many are you going to lose? That's the question. Jimmy Butler recently got to the NBA Finals. The same can't be said about Tatum and Brown. And by the way, the East doesn't look any weaker. Giannis Antetokounmpo is expected to have a healthy Chris Middleton next season. Joel Embiid might have some help next season. Atlanta might be back in the fold next season. Boston can't count on these chances being available to them. So Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are going to be called upon to step up because I think it's fair to assume that Jimmy Butler is going to answer the call in the Game 7. And by the way, Kyle Lowry, a champion who looked like he could barely walk after the last game, shows up here and hits 4 3-pointers, gives you about 18 points, was efficient and a threat all night long. So the bottom line is this Game 7 in South Beach. I started this series saying Boston was going to win in 7. I'm going to stick to that. But I got Shaquille O'Neal bugging the living hell out of me, FaceTiming me after every quarter, telling me to call him Shaq Adamas because he predicted that Miami was going to win this game and this series. So after I finished with you, Scott, I got to hear Shaquille O'Neal's mouth for the rest of the night because he was telling me all game long Boston was going to lose, and he ended up being right.
Tell Shaq that Van Pelt says hello, and I'm sure you got Draymond in there. Tell Draymond that PJ Tucker said thank you. So if you got that in your plans for the next 5 or 10 minutes, I appreciate you, and I appreciate you sharing a couple minutes on SportsCenter as always. Be well. Enjoy your trip back to Miami, my man.
Well, you know I'm going to do that.
On that list, you see some of the names that are in front of him on the all-time list. He's number 3 among active players behind Kevin Durant and LeBron James. And so, as we were talking about this before we came on the air, Michael Wilbon, he borrowed my pen, and he was sitting here making a list of all sorts of names. So Steph Curry is currently 16. He has a chance to add a 4th ring in the next 2 weeks. And perhaps, finally, a Finals MVP award remains to be seen. What could this mean for his legacy the next 2 weeks?
Well, he can move up the list, Greeny. And it's hard for me, growing up when I did and watching basketball as I have these years, to put anybody ahead of, move people past Julius Erving and Moses Malone. That's blasphemy. I mean, my father from a gravesite was reaching up to snatch me back.
And
Oscar,
as he should. As he should.
Oscar Robertson. But I'm going to just say this. I could see moving Jalen. I could see moving him up that list. He's always going to be, he's behind Russell, Jordan, Magic, Kareem, LeBron, Kobe, Shaq, Bird, Tim Duncan, and Wilt, in whatever order. I'm not going to argue order right now.
That's 10.
He's behind them. I might slide him ahead of Oscar, as hard as that is for me to do. But he could that's 11. So I could slide him up to 11, but no higher. Stephen A.
I'm famous for accusing others of committing blasphemy. I will do that right now. Right now, without a 4th title, I'm putting Steph Curry ahead, respectfully, of the great Moses Malone and the great Dr. J. Julius Erving. Steph Curry has 3 championships. They don't. Steph Curry is the greatest shooter in the history of basketball. As great of a center as Moses Malone was, as great as Dr. J was, they ain't the greatest ever. Michael Jordan, Kobe was better than Dr. J, and several centers were better than Moses Malone. There is no shooter better than Steph Curry in the history of basketball.
Here's a provocative question. If he wins in 2 weeks, does he move ahead of Kevin Durant? That would make him second among
not as a player.
No.
His resume, yes. As a player, no. Kevin Durant is one of the greatest scorers in the history of basketball. We have to remember that. And when he was on Golden State with Steph Curry, even though it was Steph Curry's team, everybody and their mother knew Kevin Durant was a better player than Steph Curry.
When you're comparing all these all-time great players, you clearly are splitting hairs, and I agree with both of you guys. That top 10 is really locked solid. I don't think he could crack that. But when I look further into the list, I disagree with Stephen A. I feel like if Steph wins the championship this year and wins Finals MVP, he can pass Kevin Durant as a current second best player behind LeBron James. But look at these resume, guys, and that's why I agree with you guys. Steph Curry still has more work to do in order to pass some of the all-time great players that you guys see listed there.
I would challenge you on that because you're not giving enough credit for Kevin Durant's defense. He's not just an elite scorer, he's actually become an elite defender. If you want to knock Kevin Durant for anything, Steph Curry is a way better executive than Kevin Durant, because Steph Curry knows how to choose the players to be around him, and Kevin Durant clearly struggled in that category.
Let me put a PS on this. Steph Curry has done something that a lot of those other great all-timers didn't do. He changed the way the game is played, and he changed the culture. I mean, seriously, Steph Curry has a legion that follows him. And also, there's a joy that is infectious that Steph Curry has brought to the game. And Stephen A. and Jalen, he's got a few more years. I mean, you got him winning 2 anyway.
Yes.
If Steph Curry goes to 5 or 6 titles, when you got that nucleus being supported by guys like Kuminga and Jordan Poole,
I get you.
The Warriors have a chance to lift Steph Curry higher in that
I get you, but we're talking about Kevin Durant. We're talking about Kevin Durant. 6'11", with a 7'6" wingspan, who can shoot from threes, mid-range, can finish in an open court and defense. I understand, but with Took...
It is.
I appreciate you for understanding that.
Always, my man.
All right, besides the obvious of winning a title, what are the further implications of this series here for the Miami Heat?
Malika, I think if they can't turn this around, the core of Jimmy and Lowry ain't going to be able to win a title. Jimmy's going to be 33 years old. That Lowry deal looks awful right now, guys. And Pat Riley is a wizard at turning teams around. But with those two guys at the forefront, I just don't see it happening for this group if they do indeed lose tomorrow night.
Well, I just think if we look at the Golden State Warriors kind of as a template, their older core is a lot of times getting supported by their younger players. The Jordan Poole, the Andrew Wiggins, like those guys. Where are those guys for the Miami Heat? And you would say it would be Bam, but he has severely underperformed to what I personally think is his capability. Tyler Hero has not been the bubble Tyler. He was during the regular season, and sometimes it's different transitioning to being that guy in the postseason, so I'm not going to cast him off yet, but the younger core of this team has not risen and supported the older vets and kind of helped them navigate some of the tougher windows.
I mean, you know, if the Heat don't make it to the finals, which I think they don't, they get eliminated. Matter of fact, they're going to lose tomorrow. I mean, you have to consider trading Jimmy Butler, right?
Wow.
Because for the simple fact he's 33 years old, he's a max guy. You got to start to have some type of rebuild, right? Like, you're not going to win a title with Jimmy Butler, especially in this Eastern Conference. If they was to win a title, the time is now. Think about it. Chris Middleton is going to be back next year. The Bucks aren't going anywhere. The Boston Celtics are here right now. Philly obviously is probably going to get better. You got the Raptors, you got the Hawks. You have this great
Notice
Eastern.
you didn't mention Brooklyn.
No, we're not. Right?
Kevin Durant.
We don't know what's going to happen with them. We don't know what's going to happen.
As long as they have Kevin Durant.
I mean, they haven't been communicating. So when you think about it, right? When you think about this culture and how they acquired Kyle Lowry and then they went and got a PJ Tucker, I just don't see, you know, what are their chances after this season of actually competing for another title.
If there's one thing I've learned the hard way, it is never underestimate the Heat's ability to reinvent themselves on the fly from what looks like a position of weakness. I will not underestimate this team. If you remember at the trade deadline, a little teensy thing that went unnoticed. They made a little trade with Oklahoma City where they amended the first-round pick they owe them, pushed it out to 2025. That wasn't an accident. That's let's increase the amount of picks we can trade this year and next year because they're going to look around. You know the Heat, they're going to go big fish hunting. They're going to look at stars. If they fall short, they are not just going to sit tight and say, well, this is our core. We got to bring it back. They are big game hunters, and they are not going to stop doing that. And 4 years ago, this franchise looked dead in the water. Bad contracts, picks out the door, no tradable assets. This is their second conference finals and almost their second finals in 3 years. It's an incredible turnaround. Do not underestimate Pat Riley.
I agree.
So for you, I mean, you were talking about Bam and what he needs to do. I think this is too early for me. It's too early to believe that the Heat are, one, that we're not coming back to Miami, and two, just that this core can't get it done. I just think Jimmy Butler has proven over and over again, we just can't underestimate what he can do. Bam Adebayo, health, right? That's got to be the biggest factor as we're looking at all this. We can't just write them off as this core doesn't work if that core isn't healthy, Richard.
Well, and the problem is that the core is getting older. And so that's where that was my point of, like, you got to look at the young players. Now, if young players are making jumps, the older core can survive. There was conversations about whether or not Klay Thompson should be starting, if Jordan Poole should be starting. We're talking about, I understand that, but that's because Jordan Poole played so well that there were moments where we're like, maybe Jordan Poole should stay in the starting lineup, right? Like, that was part of the conversation because the young player had risen to a spot where he was kind of equal or on the level with some of the stars for the Golden State Warriors. They need Bam. They need Tyler Hero to look up and be like, they won this series, the first round or second round, because of these two dudes were carrying the weight, and then Jimmy got the contributions.
And at some point, it's okay. Just look at the Celtics, right? Kyrie Irving left. You know, they let Gordon Hayward walk.
Terry Rozier
for the development of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and they gave him the keys. I feel like the leap that Tyler Hero has taken this season, despite before he got injured, I think at the end of the day, hey, it's in great hands. They're not going to hit rock bottom. Like, if I had to start a team and I got Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo to build and put other guys around them, I'm in a pretty good position.
A lot of teams would take that.
What scares me the most with Miami right now, Jimmy's knee. It's not getting better. He's going to be 33 years old. That Lowry deal, Zach, is awful. The Duncan Robinson deal is looking not so hot right now. And you've got to make a decision on Tyler Hero with the money that's coming his way. I know there is always creativity down here with this front office, but when you look at the core they have in place and the lack of what they're getting from Bam right now, that's what worries me. They're all about titles, not getting to the conference finals and getting knocked out.
I think the discussion of Bam is getting too negative. I don't know why we all expect Bam to be this like 25, 28 point a game scorer. That's not who he is. The player who he is right now is still really good. He's not the reason really that they're losing this series. It's Lowry and Butler being injured and not being able to play well. As Nick said, the Butler knee thing has been a concern since Minnesota. I mean, this is not new.
But Zach, he set the bar. Like, he set the bar for this when he made the All-Star team. So when you make an All-Star team and you start to get in the conversation of all NBA
players. But he made the All-Star team as like an 18 and 10
I understand
and
that,
5 guy.
but that was
Boston Celtics, this series has been a roller coaster ride with each team rising and falling throughout. But it's a winner takes all, and it goes down tonight on ESPN. This will be the second Eastern Conference Finals Game 7 between these two teams. And a decade ago, the Heat won Game 7 in Miami. For more, here's Nick Friedel and Tim Bontemps.
The Heat feel like they were built for this moment. They feel like this is what their culture is all about, finding a way to win when the rest of the world thinks they can't. Jimmy Butler has a team full of players that think just like him, that are convinced they can will themselves across the finish line no matter what circumstances they face. That's why Eric Spoelstra's team is brimming with confidence as they prepare for the biggest game of the year. They've always believed they were the most mentally tough team on the block. Now they get another chance to prove it, with Butler coming off one of the best performances of his career. There's no two better words in pro sports than Game 7, Spoelstra said Friday night, especially in the Heat's case, when you have Butler leading the way. Now for more on the Celtics, here's Tim Bontemps.
Nick, when Jason Tatum was asked about his team's chances of winning Game 7 on the road, he didn't hesitate to answer. Scale of 1 to 10, Tatum asked with a smile, 10. Boston knows it gave away a golden opportunity to wrap this series up in Game 6. But the Celtics already won an elimination game in Milwaukee last round. They've won 2 games in Miami this time around. They believe they can make it a third. We've got to come out, Jaylen Brown.